mother and my sister and I came out, we moved in with my father, and just a year later, my parents divorced. So by the time I was 5, my mother was raising my sister and I on her own, and I had a lot of time alone at the house. So I would, watch Sesame Street and try to forget about my Jewish and Israeli past because I really wanted to assimilate and fit in with all of my new friends at school. And so I learned English from watching Sesame Street, and I had the Cookie Monster's accent for a couple years because, that was the only English that I was seeing. So I was even more awkward than I probably thought I was. And, at that age, it was very hard to try to kind of celebrate my uniqueness and my family story. And all I wanted to do was eat tater tots, make friends at school, and just be like them. And so I guess subconsciously, I throughout really my entire childhood into my adult life, I always kind of never celebrated or honored my Israeli heritage. I was always a little bit of ashamed by it because it was kind of like pushed into my brain from a young age that I should be the same and not different. And I really took me a long time, but I finally, after many years of cooking and many years of working in the restaurant business and, marrying my wife and having more time to just kind of understand who I was, I finally began to embrace my Israeli heritage and be proud of it when I opened Shaya, my Israeli restaurant in New Orleans. And ever since then, I feel like I've been more complete as a person, and I feel like I've been able to really kind of express myself more genuinely because it's been a long journey. And the book really kind of takes you through that journey, and it takes you through it takes you through my mother's story of being born with cerebral palsy in her hand and having a really hard time kind of ever feeling like she ever had a voice. So she always kind of took a back seat to many people around her, which she never needed to do. And my father, who escaped Romania when he was kicked out of his house at the age of 13, and eventually moved to Israel and fought in the Yom Kippur War, and then opened a shop in Israel that wasn't successful, and he hated Israel, and he wanted to only come to America and be an American and bring us all over. So there was a lot of layers to, I think, why I grew up the way that I did, and why as a teenager I found myself really torn with where my place was. And I would act out, I was always getting in trouble to the point where I would get arrested all the time for doing all kinds of stupid things. And it was my home economics teacher in high school who really saw that I had a passion for food. And even though all of her colleagues at the high school thought she was crazy for putting a knife in my hand in her classroom, she had worked out a deal with the principal of the high school to say that whenever I got kicked out of class, instead of suspending me, they should just send me to Donna's class, and Donna would take care of it. And she did. And to me, she's a very strong woman. She's a very vocal. She has a very confident way of communicating. And she really was very much like a mother figure to me. She got me my first job at a restaurant when I was 16 years old. And when it was time for me to graduate school and I had no plans on where to go or what to do, she helped me get into culinary school. And she helped me fill out all of the paperwork and find the grants and the scholarships because we couldn't afford to pay tuition. And so there's a lot of these stories throughout the book about people and how kind of moments in my life connect with these people, and how food has really kind of played a role through through my life the entire time. So when I set out to write the book, I didn't want to just put recipes in the book that you could cook. And I kind of didn't even know how I was going to write the book, like how I was going to compile recipes for hummus and pita, and then also jambalaya and gnocchi, and also buttermilk biscuits and za'atar fried chicken, and all of these kind of foods that have been so important to me in my life, but I didn't know how to like combine those things and say, hey, here's a book, if you ever want to make gnocchi one night and then hummus the next night, go for it. And I was afraid that people would be like, what kind of cookbook is this? Like, where's the identity to it? And so I realized that the only way to really show the identity of the book was through my own identity. And by writing the book, it was an extremely therapeutic experience, and I feel like I truly learned so much about myself through the writing process. I also had a chance to call my mom and to call my dad and ask them questions that I'd never asked them before, and my sister, and really kind of delve into the history of our family, because the second that I could get out of my mom's house at the age of 17, I never looked back. And I continued to just kind of suppress that part of my life because it wasn't a great childhood. But now as I'm older and through the writing process, I feel like I was really able to kind of tap into the psychology of everybody in my family that kind of led from one moment to another. And it was really special. It was an amazing time for me to learn more about them, but also myself, and to write these short stories about each one of these moments. And then the short stories blossom into these recipes. So as you're cooking from the book, I hope that you read the stories first and that you are inspired to cook the food because the stories meant something to you. So I'm going to make a couple recipes from the book, and the great thing about these two recipes is that they really work hand in hand together. And this recipe is from the chapter called Solo Hamantaschen. And my mother, when she left my father, I was 5 years old, and she sold tickets at a train station and also worked in an accounts payable office at an oil firm. So because she had two jobs, she spent all this time working, and I would spend all my time getting in trouble and also cooking. And I spent a lot of time at home alone, really kind of playing with knives and turning the burners on, preheating the oven, lighting things on fire. But along that, I would also cook things every once in a while. So my grandmother, when she would come and visit, would always have me in the kitchen, spending time with her, and really watching what she does. And I would help grind the meat grinder that she had, like a little C-clamp meat grinder on the side of the table. And my grandmother was Bulgarian, so she made all of these amazing Bulgarian recipes. And whenever my grandmother wasn't at home, there was not much cooking going on in the house except for on the weekends when my mother had time to do it. So on Sunday, she would make all of these recipes, and then she would have them stocked up in the refrigerator. And throughout the week, I'd come home from school, and I would have several hours to myself, and I would eat all the food out of the refrigerator. So I also started making Hamantaschen at the age of 7, and that was my kind of first foray into baking. And I would make it with my mother during Purim often, but then one day she wasn't home, and I found her recipe book, and I kind of knew where all the ingredients were, and I turned on the oven, and I started making Hamantaschen. And I would call her at work and say, hey, Mom, I'm making Hamantaschen. And she's like, oh, hell, you're going to burn the house down. And I was like, no, I got this. And she would like kind of talk me through it, and I would make the Hamantaschen. And then it turned out, and I don't know if this is true or not, but she said that all of her friends said that my hamantaschen were better than hers. So that's where the chapter title, Solo Hamantaschen, comes from. But that recipe, that chapter is also filled with a lot of other recipes that my mom would make to have in the refrigerator that would hold up really well, knowing that she wasn't going to be home a lot and that I needed to eat. So I'm making 2 recipes. First, I'm going to make tzatziki, which everyone's had, but I'll show you a few secrets that make it even better. Everyone's had tzatziki, right? Good tzatziki? What about bad tzatziki? A lot of bad tzatziki out there. It's an epidemic. So let's talk about what makes good tzatziki tonight and how they can differentiate. So there's a few things that I like to do. First, I always, of course, start with cucumbers. You'll see that I've diced these cucumbers up, and I've removed the center section, which are not going to go to waste, but I don't want to dice that up. I want to use that for the pulp. So I have this mixing bowl. I can put it in here, and I'll throw all of my cucumbers in. And please, throughout the demo, if anybody has any questions about any recipes or any food-related or non-food-related things, please don't hesitate to ask. Okay, so I've diced the cucumbers, and here I have the insides, which are really watery, right? It's all the seeds, but it's got a ton of great flavor. So I'll take that, and I'll actually grate this on the grater here, which adds all that flavor to the tzatziki, but you don't get the kind of diced seed part. All the diced parts are just the meat, and then here all that flavor is coming through. This is another technique that I use for grating onions and tomatoes anytime I make like stuffed cabbage. I always grate my onions and grate my tomatoes like this, and then mix it with the ground meat. Okay, so I've grated the cucumber. I'm going to take some garlic and open it up. And garlic, I feel, is one of the most important parts of tzatziki because it's what gives it that spiciness, right? You guys know when you eat like good tzatziki and it's got that like spicy finish on the end, that comes from garlic. So I'm going to take a nice big clove here and peel it. And then I got my trusty grater here, and I'm just going to grate the garlic on the thin part. So instead of having to like chop the whole thing up really fine and having some big chunks, I can just grate it, and I know that it's all going to be really, really fine, and it's all going to really permeate through the tzatziki as I do it. Okay, so that's grated. And now, what else makes good tzatziki? How about some lemon juice? That adds the acid. I got this really fancy lemon squeezer here, and I'm just going to squeeze that juice in there. And I like to put a lot of lemon juice in there. I really like to get it super flavorful and let that pop come from the acid. So I'm going to pop that in there, and then I'll do the other half as well. This is really one of my favorite dishes to kind of make ahead of time, especially if I have people coming over and I don't want to be rushing around the kitchen once all my guests show up. This is a great way to have something that really only gets better as it sits. So far, we have all of these. What about dill? You guys usually put dill in your tzatziki, right? So we'll take some dill and we'll chop that up. And I like to use a lot of dill when I make tzatziki. So let me chop all that up. Throw it in the bowl. All right, so far we're like normal tzatziki territory, right? Nothing too weird. So let's make it a little extra special. We're going to have here, we have dill seed, and I like to take the dill seed and I like to take the top off and then take this little wrapper out. Don't try that at home. And this is dill weed, and you can use dill weed or dill seed, but it adds that extra kind of pop of dill flavor, which I like. So I'll put some of that in there. Dried herbs, some people are weird about it. Some people really like dried herbs. I like them because I feel they add a completely different flavor profile. White pepper, just a touch. This gives it a really kind of good balance of background spice. So far we've added garlic for spice, but then we've also added the white pepper for spice. So we're using like layers of flavor here. The same way that we've used fresh dill, and then we've used dill seed or dill weed, that gives it those layers of flavor. Next is caraway seed. All right, everybody just watch out. I'm gonna pop that thing open. There we go. And caraway seed is the spice that goes into rye bread. So if you think of rye, you can think of caraway flavor. So I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna just chop it up. I like to get it you can get it ground, or if you have a spice grinder, you can grind it. If not, you can just take it and chop it into small little pieces. And that caraway adds an amazing flavor to the tzatziki. You wouldn't think, right? Like rye bread flavor and tzatziki together, but have you ever had tzatziki on rye bread? It's really good. So why wouldn't it be good if you just put that in there? Okay, good. So that's going in. All right, now, so we've entered some crazy tzatziki territory. We're going to go back to normal, and I'm going to add a little bit of salt and season it up. Kosher salt, because we're at the Museum of Jewish Heritage. Thank you so much for having us. And then I'm going to use yogurt. So I like Bulgarian yogurt, especially for tzatziki because it's thinner. If you guys can see the yogurt, it's not like a Greek yogurt, which is really kind of thick. The Bulgarian yogurt is thinner, and it really kind of helps to spread that yogurt flavor out and give you this great sourness. But yes, please. You can get it at Whole Foods. Yeah. Yeah, it does. It's a style of yogurt. They say it's of the Bulgarian region. I'm going to add a little sour cream as well, and that kind of gives it a richness. So I have the acidity, I have the beautiful acidity from the Bulgarian yogurt. I have the sour cream, which adds this kind of like rich, almost buttery flavor to it. What have I forgotten to add? That's pretty much it for the tzatziki. So I'll stir this up, and you have this gorgeous tzatziki that doesn't kind of taste like all your other boring tzatziki's that are out there. Because of the caraway, because of the layers of dill, because of the grated garlic that really gives it that spicy pop. So now we have this great tzatziki. But wait, there's more. Yes. Was there a question? Yes. Well, because it's a very white dish, right, with this yogurt and the sour cream. And so you can use black pepper, but I like to kind of reserve black pepper sometimes for like heartier dishes. And I feel like tzatziki's kind of light and delicate, and I like to preserve that kind of white color to it. So it's all white and green. It might be a weird chef thing. I don't know. You can use whatever pepper you want. It all works, and it's all super tasty. So this is tzatziki, and like I said, we can now, again, with my mom, cooking for me, trying to make all of these ingredients really spread and last through the week. I'd probably complained about eating tzatziki too much. She was like, all right, well, I'm going to make you tor tor. And tor tor is a soup, a chilled soup, that really has the same ingredients as tzatziki. So I'll just pour this into a bigger bowl. And now I'm going to turn it into a soup. And this is great because if you have leftover tzatziki, then all of a sudden Wednesday comes around and you got a new dish. So to the soup, what I'm going to do is add some water. And that's going to kind of thin it out a little bit. And then I'm going to add some more herbs. I like to kind of make it a little bit more complex. So I have basil here, and I have some mint. And now you see like the flavors of the herbs are really going to kind of shine through, and it's going to really change the tzatziki into something completely different. So I'll chop up the basil and the mint. And I'll add it to my newfound soup over here. I have some walnuts that I'll just take. And you can toast them or not toast them. I kind of like to toast them usually before I use them, but there's no oven up here, as you guys can see. So I'm just going to take them and crush them with my hands, or you can chop them with a knife. And that's going to add a really great texture to this soup. So that's all stirred together. And then a lot of extra virgin olive oil. And that adds richness, and it adds this great peppery flavor without having to put black pepper in there. And I'll take that, and I'll just stir it all up. So now look at this beautiful chilled soup. I mean, really, it just comes together in seconds after you make the tzatziki. And I'll add some more salt because we added all that water and we want to season it up a little bit more. And what I'll do right before I serve it is I'll take some walnuts and I'll crush them up right on the top for garnish. And then I'll take a little extra virgin olive oil and just drizzle it right over the top. And now we have a beautiful torah soup. And that's two meals in one shot. Not so bad. Not so bad. Oh, please, yes, you can look. And then I'll taste it and make sure that it tastes good. I think it tastes pretty good. I think you guys should taste this at some point. We might need to get some plastic spoons. Yeah, so I think that, yeah, please, everybody come get a look. Oh, and if you really want to get fancy, watch this. We can take some lemon zest and just sprinkle that over the top. And that adds even another layer of really great flavor. No, this is like something that exists out there, and she never really kind of invented it. She just kind of, she just celebrated the Bulgarian cuisine, and these are things that like the Bulgarians eat a lot because they raise a lot of farm animals, and so they have a lot of yogurt and a lot of milk. No, we use blenders all the time. Yeah, but like if I used a blender, the dish would be much different, because it wouldn't have the texture of the diced cucumbers and the texture of the walnuts. So every once in a while, like, yes, please. I'll use a blender. Yes, please, enjoy it. And so I think that you guys will enjoy the book because it's full of these kind of really quick, simple recipes. There are definitely some recipes that are a little bit more time-consuming, and the great thing about the book is that there's these little clocks next to recipes that take a while to make. So if something can be ready by lunch or by dinner, the recipe won't have this clock, but if it takes like hours to prepare or there's an overnight section of the recipe, that's where that little clock shows up. So I think it's really user-friendly in that way. Yes, please. Yeah, short rib hummus. I love that topic.
So, how did you come up with this?
Yeah, so.
It's a little atypical. It's so good. I'm dreaming about it.
Oh, good. So at the restaurant, we used to serve a short rib hummus, which is hummus, and really hummus is like, Israeli ketchup, right? Like you can put anything with hummus and it's going to be good. So We always make this really smooth, creamy hummus, and we have short ribs that we season and we braise and then slice thin, and we'll put that in the middle of the hummus, and then we'll put the walnuts and raisins and harissa all over the top. So it's got this kind of like great nutty crunch and the sweetness from the raisins and the spiciness from the harissa, and then all of the short ribs. That's a really good topping for hummus.
And do you have your hummus recipe?
The hummus recipe is in the book. There's a long version using dried garbanzo beans, and there's a shortcut version using canned garbanzo beans. And they're both really, really good. Did you have a question? Yes. Yep. So you just serve it just like that. Yes. I like dried garbanzo beans better for hummus. So when I make it, we always use dried garbanzo beans, but they take overnight to soak, and then you also have to cook them for a good while prior to being able to get the skins off. So with canned garbanzo beans, you kind of pick up a little bit of that canned bean flavor, which isn't the end of the world, but you don't get that with the dried garbanzo beans. Yes?
I tried doing the dry garbanzo and it failed. They tasted really bitter.
Oh, really? Did you put baking soda in the water? Well, I would double check the recipe, but use this recipe and they'll be good. I promise. Yes?
Is the pita recipe in here?
Yeah, it is.
Is it going to be as good as the
It will be just as good. I promise. Yeah. The pita recipe is great. Yeah, so the secret to doing it at home is to use the broil setting on your oven. So what I do is I preheat the oven to about 500 degrees, like all the way up, and I'll have a pizza stone on the rack. And then when I put my pita in the oven, and I'll let it preheat for a couple of hours to really let that stone get hot, like at the highest temperature. So if you make sure your smoke alarms are working and have batteries. And then I'll take the pita and I'll put it onto the stone, and then I'll turn the oven off and turn the broiler setting on. And then what that does is it gives you this really intense heat from the top. Your stone's already hot because it's been preheating, and that's kind of how you get those charred spots, but then you have to really watch it. So what we do is we'll turn the broiler setting on, and we'll just kind of sit right in front of the oven with our tongs, and we'll watch the pita rise, we'll watch the color start to build, and then the second that happens, we'll open the door, put our tongs in there, flip it, let the color happen on the other side, and you get a really good pita bread. It works great for pizza that way too. These are all great questions. Yes?
Have you had a chance professionally to talk to Alon and trade ideas?
Yeah, I have. He came and dined with us at the restaurant and really enjoyed himself. He wrote a very beautiful quote for the back of the book. And so he's a huge inspiration of mine. I have looked up to his work and, of course, have all of his cookbooks and have read them all. And I'm a big fan of his. So it was an honor to have him come eat at the restaurant and then say so many nice things about the book. Yes?
There's a lot of Israeli restaurants that are so many in the city and around the country that are very popular now, especially over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Do you have any theories as to why you think the Israeli food has become a food fashion right now? I mean, obviously.
Yeah, well, it's amazing, and that's always a good start. And people like Otto Lengi have helped to put it on the map. And, I think it's kind of our culture of when something good is around, everybody tries to get on the bandwagon and to do it themselves, which is a great thing because that means that there's an audience out there for this cuisine. Otherwise, people wouldn't be opening businesses to serve it. And I think that that's a very important and impactful tool for us to talk about Israel and what is great about Israel when there tends to always be so many mixed feelings or negativity based around what happens in Israel. Food is always a great way to like say, oh, everyone calm down and just like have some hummus, and you'll be fine. And that's what I think is most important, is that the world is now saying Israeli cuisine as something very positive, and they're happy about it. And I think that's something that we should all be proud of and celebrate. Yes?
Do you think you'll go back and do an Italian concept now that you feel
Yeah.
Illinois, or do you think you'd like hit your stride and this is the next thing?
No, I mean, Italian food is a huge part of my life. I lived in Italy, and my second family is in Italy that I lived with when I was there. And so Italian food means a lot to me, and we'll definitely continue to cook that food. Yes?
Do you fear getting an issue where if you're saying it's Israeli cooking, that the Arabs go and say, it's not Israeli, it's Arab?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always answer that saying that they're right. It is Arab. I mean, Israel's only been around since 1948, and hummus was around way before that. And my definition of Israeli food is what's being cooked in Israel today, is what, since 1948, when all of the diaspora came and settled in Israel, that created its own microculture. And that Israeli food today is Arab, it's Syrian, it's Yemenite, it's Turkish, it's Greek, it's Moroccan, it's Bulgarian. It's all of these cultures that have settled in the land of Israel and now are cooking, and they're marrying each other, and they're having kids, and there's, my father is Romanian, and my mother is Israeli, and so there's this combination, and I can now choose to express that difference and that unique quality, which I think is really great. And my passport says Israel, and that's where I was born, and that's where my family lived, and so I can say Israeli food is what I know is served in Israel and what I feel Israel means to me. Yes?
So I've been to your restaurant in New Orleans, and it's wonderful. And I know there's a really famous Israeli restaurant in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But is there anything that creative in New York?
Well, Nur just opened up. Yeah. And that's been getting rave reviews, and yeah, NUR. Yeah. Balabusta. Yeah, I feel that there's a lot of places. It's every place kind of has its own vibe going, and I haven't been to Nur yet, but I've heard good things about it. Yeah. Yes.
So, you say it's your journey back to Israel. When did you first go back to Israel after growing up here in the States? And how often do you get there now? What's your relationship with?
Yeah. Well, we went back, I think about 6 times throughout my childhood into my early adulthood. But it was in 2011 that I went that it really kind of struck me that I needed to be celebrating this part of my life and this food. And my journey back to Israel isn't about a trip to Israel. It's about my journey finding my Israeli identity and feeling proud about sharing it in America. And so that's, as you read the book, you can kind of see all of the ups and downs that kind of contributed to that journey. Yes.
I know on Tel Aviv, they're starting to do some of those restaurants as well, where they're celebrating the Jewishness, the Israeli restaurants, and they're doing a lot of gourmet stuff like that. Have you been to any of those things?
I have, yeah, and I love them all. I mean, I go there all the time, and I have to leave because I'm going to explode if I stay there for too long. You had a question?
So I actually was going to touch on Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. It's become a culinary destination in its own right today.
Right.
About Southern America. Just curious if you had any thoughts on that. And then the other question I had, which is kind of a two-part question, is, I find in Israel, it's like really far up to table.
Yeah.
We've never seen before, right?
Yeah.
And that, like charred eggplant, just so good because the eggplants
Right.
are so good.
Right.
How do you compensate for that here when you can't get it?
Oh, you absolutely can. I mean, we have farms all over the place, and we have farmers that work for us at our restaurants. Go to the farmers markets. Those vegetables are coming right out of the ground. They take so much of a shorter journey than the vegetables at your Whole Foods do. And so, I would say shop at the markets, and the book really kind of lays out all of these great seasonal recipes that for every season there's something to make. You guys have a lot of markets out here. Whoever sees big piles of like collard greens and mustard greens at the market, well, there's a recipe for spinaco pita that uses collards and mustards, not just spinach. So it gives you a chance to kind of really explore different ingredients and how to make them. Yeah.
So we both lived in New Orleans. I was there a number of years. And it was very cool to see a restaurant pop up there after having been there before.
Right.
Versus first Dominica and then
Right.
Shaya. And New Orleans, as you know, has like its own very distinct
Sure.
style.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very awesome to see the way your Middle Eastern style really put the two together.
Right.
I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what the process was like for you.
Yeah, so I opened Dominica, and everyone loves Italian food everywhere. So Dominica was open for 7 years prior to Shaya opening, and so I really constantly involved myself in the community, in all different types of charitable causes. We would serve 500 people a day at Dominica. It was just a very busy restaurant. So we were able to kind of build trust in the community because of our presence there. And so when I opened Shaya, I felt like we already kind of had that step ahead, and that people were interested in what I was doing. And that kind of opened the door to all of the awards that started to come, and then all of the people from around the country that would come and eat at the restaurant. And at the end of April, we're opening Saba on Magazine Street in New Orleans in Uptown, and that is going to be our best work yet. I'm really excited about that, and I'm super pumped about what Saba is going to be able to do for the Israeli cuisine in the nation.
How is that going to be different from Shaya?
Well, we're going to be using fresh milled wheat for our pita bread from a local miller, which is really going to make the pita bread even better than it was before. We're going to be open for brunch, and we're going to have this great kind of New York deli aspect to our brunch that also blends with the Israeli breakfast. So you could get like really good chopped liver and smoked sable, but you can also get shakshuka, and you can get feta cheese marinated with fresh herbs, and you can get hummus with eggs and pickles like you do at the markets in Jerusalem for breakfast. So we got some tricks up our sleeves. We also have a coal grill where we're going to be grilling things on skewers, like al ha'esh style, like you see happening a lot in Israel. So kofta, we'll even be doing, chicken and beef, all cooked over these beautiful coals. So it'll be great. Yes.
As you're adding the restaurants, that was one of my questions, you answered that. Are you also thinking of packaging at all your breads or anything?
Maybe one day. We're not quite there yet. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
So, the convergence of New Orleanian type of food and the Israeli food, are there recipes in here that sort of merge those two cultures, or do you see them as somewhat distinct?
Well, when it comes to Southern and Israeli, I try not to mix them too much. We've done some fun things in the past, like matzo ball gumbo, which is great, and we've put fried oysters on top of hummus before, which I think is also really good. We've played around with that a lot, but the book doesn't really connect the two so much because the Southern chapter is kind of pre-Italy, and so the Southern and the Italian meld a little bit more. But every once in a while, we'll throw shrimp in the shakshuka just for fun. Yes.
Are there a lot of recipes in there that can be made kosher?
Yeah, absolutely. Many of them are vegetable based, with olive oil and lemon and onions. And so like our tabbouleh, our lutenitsa, our baba ganoush, like all of those are very easily made kosher. But the book really kind of delves into all of these moments in my life. And so there were moments in my life where I was confused about those two things. And that's where bacon ends up in the kugel. So, but you can always just leave the bacon out. It's that simple. Yes.
Any chance of a New York restaurant?
No, not anytime soon. I mean, maybe one day. But we have our plates full. I mean, I love New York, and I think it would do really well here. But we're opening 2 restaurants this year, so for now we just have to keep our eyes on the prize and stay focused.
Are you opening in time for the first weekend of Jazz?
I don't think so. I think if we're lucky, we'll be open by the second week of Jazz Fest.
What's the second restaurant that you're opening? You said Saba?
Saba is opening in New Orleans, and in Denver we're opening Safta. Yeah. So we have the grandparents in the River North neighborhood. Yeah, and that opens in June. Yes.
As Jewish, and what I mean by that is this, like you've been saying Israeli food. I haven't really heard the word it's Jewish food.
Sure.
Because I think of like Jewish cuisine, not Israeli cuisine. I mean, they're a little different. I mean,
They're very different.
so,
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So, like, to me, Jewish food is foods that have really kind of kept the kashrut, right? That has happened from all over the world and has come to Israel. And Israeli food is also Arab food. It's also Christian food. It's so many different cultures and religions that come together. And so we don't, the fact that I have bacon in this book or that I have shrimp in this book, to me doesn't make it a Jewish book. I think of Jewish as really being grounded by the laws of kashrut. There's a matzo ball soup recipe with duck in the book, which could be Jewish, but I keep them separate for a reason, and it's also because as we run a business, our goal isn't to push religion in any way. This is a restaurant and an opportunity for everybody, whether you come from Hinduism or you're atheist or whatever your background is. We want you to feel at home and comfortable in the restaurant, and especially as part of our team that we grow. We don't want to insinuate that we're pushing Judaism on anything. For us, it's more of a cultural heritage that encompasses a lot of different religions. Yes.
In your restaurant, does your menu have things that if somebody eats, say, kosher style that doesn't eat certain things?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is great. You guys asked such great questions. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. This was amazing. It was my honor to be here.